morning. I'm Jason Mink, and welcome to Comics for Breakfast. What's that? Comics for breakfast! It's true, folks. 4 out of 5 doctors recommend comics as part of a healthy, balanced breakfast. Every Sunday we're going to get together here. We're going to crack open 3 comics. We're going to read them. We're going to admire the artwork. We're going to chuckle over the ads. We may even go through the letters pages. We're going to go through those books and see just what makes those 3 comics great. But hey, enough of my blathering. It's time for breakfast.
Breakfast.
Our first book on the pile is Captain Marvel. No, not that one. Or that one. No. Today we're talking about the MF Enterprises version of The Good Captain. Now, contrary to what you might think, the MF in MF Enterprises doesn't stand for, but to some people it might as well. Those are the initials of Maverick publisher Myron Fast, who wasn't known for his decorum or above-the-board business practices. What he was known for was reprinting previously published comics without establishing copyright or paying royalties. In the industry, Fast was regarded as an annoyance to his competitors and a terror to those unlucky enough to work for him. The publisher wasn't shy about publicly berating his creators, backing up his bellicose personality with a .22 pistol that he carried with him at all times, occasionally discharging down the hallway to make his point. Always quick to cash in on trends, Fast wanted to take advantage of the superhero craze initiated by the success of the 1966 Batman television show. Since he didn't have any old art handy to repurpose, Fast contacted Carl Burgos, the creator of the original Android Human Torch, to come up with a new concept.
Burgos, in the twilight of his creative career, simply recycled his blonde android concept, only instead of it bursting into flames, this one had autonomous limbs. Fast, not content without ripping somebody off, decided to call this new creation Captain Marvel, as Fawcett Comics had let their copyright on the name lapse after a lengthy court battle with DC Comics. But that's another story.
Today we're looking at Giant Action issue number 2, which commanded the hefty price of 1 case quarter, which was a lot of money back then. In our first story, the captain constructs a time machine powered by sonic waves. Using these good vibrations, bop bop, he's transported back in time to the Old West.
There the captain discovers 30th century rogues Elastic Man and Tiny Man running a gold rush scam on the miners from a nearby town. Now, if this scheme seems beneath a pair of superpowered felons from the future, you wouldn't be wrong. Without putting too fine a point on it, this is all just filler. Hey, putting together 52 pages every other month ain't easy, pal.
Before you know it, the captain is swept into the future. There he discovers a strange city and somnambulistic sleepers wandering its streets.
In a bid to release the mind-controlled populace, CM fights some silly-looking robots, escapes a death trap, and then destroys the computer overlord in charge. Instead of reveling in their newfound freedom, the city's human charges immediately degenerate into savagery. Without bothering to resolve the even greater humanitarian crisis he himself has just created, our hero indulges in a self-righteous monologue before leaving the chaos to return to his own safe and well-appointed environment.
But that's the funny thing about social commentary. It often reveals more about the commentator than the subject.
In Who Put Out the Lights, the captain investigates the Great Blackout of November 9th, 1965, a real-world event where an estimated 30 million people were left without electricity for up to 13 hours. And while the powers that be conjured up some nonsense about faulty relays, this story gives us the real dope. It turns out Dr. Fate, no, not that one, has taken control of the world's power grids and is blackmailing the planet's leaders to the tune of
$1 million.
The captain rolls in to tumble his game, but Fate is no dummy and blackmails our hero into revealing all of his row-body secrets. And just when it seems like it's over for the good captain, he uses his head, and miscellaneous other bits, to save the day. In the final story of the issue, our hero battles the Atom Jaw. Wonder if he knows this guy. MF Enterprises' Captain Marvel lasted 5 issues until Myron Fast returned his focus to magazines, most notably the Eerie Pubs. Noticing this, Stan Lee quickly plucked the slightly soiled moniker from Fast's junk pile and sought a copyright, leading to yet another captain. This one far more successful. Next up, a word about the Old Guys Who Like Old Comics group. Folks are always amazed to discover comics in the group that have been around for years, and I'm no exception. Thanks to someone in the group posting it, I discovered Yogi Bear Goes to the UN. Our story finds Yogi and Boo Boo up to their usual shenanigans, hustling food from park goers and dodging perpetual buzzkill Ranger Smith, when the Ursine duo stumble across a piece of paper hidden in the bowel of an old tree. It's a 100-year-old treaty signed between the U.S. government and the Wawa Indians. The treaty grants all of the park's land to the bears, which are the tribe's sacred totem animal, and before you can say picnic basket, Yogi is leading a secessionist movement to transform Jellystone Park into the utopian paradise of Bearsylvania.
The writing is funny, farcical, and sharper than you'd expect. This isn't your average Yogi Bear comic. Yogi steps out of Jellystone and into a world an entire decade away from the Endangered Species Act, where bears are just another group of the disenfranchised.
What follows is a surprisingly on-the-nose take on how the UN handled such matters back then, with the august body throwing every possible roadblock in the way of Yogi establishing his new sovereign state.
I'm not sure how enjoyable kids found satire based on the minutiae of world politics. This seems more like the sort of thing adults would guffaw over through a mouthful of pipe smoke, but the book doesn't shy away from it. Despite some unflattering representations of Native Americans, there's some good stuff here.
The writer's sympathies are clearly with the bears, and in spite of typically getting screwed, they have the last laugh when the UN Human Rights Commission demand that one day of the year, the bears get to make the rules. You know, that is, as long as they don't start eating people, stuff like that. Yogi Bear Goes to the UN is an unusual book for certain, but it shows just how diverse and long-reaching comics have been in their near century of existence. Wrapping things up, we have the comic adaptation of David Wilkerson's The Cross and the Switchblade. Now, this comic was based on an autobiography, a bestseller in its day, and the subject of a popular movie as well, starring a young Eric Estrada. Now, I've never watched this movie, but if the comic is any indication, it's mega cheese. So grab a bag of chips. Let's dig right in. Motivated by the headline, "7 Teenagers Murder Polio Victim," small-town Pastor David leaves his 9-month pregnant wife to travel to New York to help the kids. What's his plan? He doesn't really have one. He shows up in time for the gang's trial, waves a Bible around, but is thrown out of the proceedings and publicly humiliated in the newspaper.
He stumbles through a pre-Disneyfied Times Square, agog at the decadence on display. Befriended by a young gang member, Little Bo, David is swept into the orbit of the Mau Mau gang, who become the new target of his zeal. Soon, David is providing questionable medical information to heroin addicts, waving his Bible around, and getting his ass kicked by gang leader Nicky.
Played by Eric Estrada. This is Nicky on the cover, and a scene that's so great it's not even in the comic. What the hell, Spire? Maybe cut the talky talk by a few pages and give the poor kids who are stuck reading this thing a little action. But that would be too much fun, which I guess is a sin? What, too much? Hey, don't judge me, pal. You're the one sitting here watching me talk about comics on a Sunday morning when you should be in church. You heathen. Anyway, this book is written and drawn and inked by Al Hartley, under an Al Hartley cover, in association with Al Hartley, an Al Hartley production. Al Hartley, as you may know, was a longtime illustrator on Archie, which makes this comic all the more enjoyable. It's real weird. I get it. This isn't a regular comic, and it shouldn't be looked at in such a way, but in spite of some questionable storytelling choices and its naive take on juvenile delinquency, the book's heart is in the right place. I'm sure that didn't help the poor kid who was wishing it was a copy of Spider-Man, but hey, they're not all going to make you say Excelsior. For the old guys who like Old Comics Network, I'm Jason Mink. If you enjoyed this breakfast, please consider supporting us at the link below. I'll see you next Sunday. Cheers.